Imagine just trying to fit in, be a part of the group, and taking drugs at age 8. The All Eyes on Me podcast is the true story of Vincent Lilly, his struggle with drugs, addiction, recovery, and onward to hope and health. Be ready to experience another world. Here's author Kevin Zadrill and Vincent Lilly.
Hello, welcome back. My name is Kevin Zadrill. I'm the host of this podcast about the book All Eyes on Me, true story of recovery, addiction, and hope. And with us today, as always, is Vincent Lilly. As we talk further on your book, which is available throughout Amazon. And I think it's important, some of the messaging that we bring forward today to our listeners on topics. Some people call it grounding. Some people call it self-care. But it's things that you've done for yourself emotionally and physically, spiritually. I think it's important for people to get understanding in terms of what they can do to help themselves. Now, I know a big part for yourself was when you came out of addiction treatment. You had become involved with Panam Place, and that was really the first time where you were able to get a routine going, and boxing became a big part of your routine. Can you kind of take us through what that helped you do and what you did with that?
I think entering into Panam Place was very exciting for me, just because of the fact that I'd never done boxing before, and I obviously was very into working out and that pretty regularly, and so I know that boxing is something that can be very good for you physically and mentally, pretty much all the way around. And so when I came up with the option to enter into a place like that, I quickly jumped on it because I was pretty excited about, the stuff that I could learn from doing the boxing. And so with a place like that and doing the boxing, you also get, you learn a lot of other things through the boxing and the trainers that are there.
So I know that was really the place that you and I first met, and really where this story, the book, evolved from. And I remember the first time that we had met there. I think it was your first time. But one of the things that really struck me is that you threw everything into it. It became your focus, and you just absorbed the intensity and the commitment that boxing offered. And you were going every day, twice a day.
That was really good for me because I was the type of person that never really had to do any sort of cardio when it came to exercising, because I was always very lean and I always kind of had trouble gaining weight. And so I never really had to do cardio. I mean, I never really was fat or overweight or anything like that, or had struggles with the weight problem. But the cardio that comes with doing the boxing, obviously at first it wasn't very fun. And, but I mean, once you get into a routine of it, I think is the most important thing for the boxing, is that once you get into the routine of it, and then you start to see results of what it can do for you physically.
And that routine was important too, because it gave you that sense of grounding, that gave you a purpose. Every day you knew what you're going to be doing, and it was something that you looked forward to. And I know that there was some commitment to be part of that program at Panam Place to do so much boxing per week, but you certainly exceeded all of that and then more.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think when it comes to routines and that, I think literally if you do anything over and over again enough, that it'll become a routine. And then once it becomes a routine, like you honestly don't feel right if you don't do it that way the next day or whatever. If you don't stay on that routine, you feel like, your day is off. So I think that's just another good tip for people, that when it comes to doing things, usually it's probably something that you won't like doing, but if you get into a routine of doing it, that it will just become second nature, and it'll make it a lot easier to get involved in doing things maybe that you aren't comfortable with at first.
Especially for yourself, because coming through addiction treatment program, that routine is very important to keep you focused now on a healthy alternative versus going back to old ways, isn't it?
Well, see, well, when you go through the sobriety piece of it, and you start to build those routines around that, it's very easy for you to push out anything that isn't a part of that. And so if you get involved with people from your past or situations from your past, it's easy to push. It's easier to push that stuff out when you have already built this other routine around your sobriety.
And for the people that you were there with, going through the program, there was that sense that you're all in this together, right? You were doing things together, and I know you were a mentor for a lot of the other participants within that program.
Yeah, I think it was actually kind of it was kind of almost exciting in a sense to live in that place called Panam Place, because the way that they had it set up was like it was like a loft. So it was like all the beds and everything inside there there was no like bedrooms. It was just like a big room, and then they had all these sections that were sectioned off with those dividers to designate where your room would be. And so I think there might have been about 20, maybe 20 or more than 20 guys at one point that were all living together. We're all training together. We're all socializing together. And it just, at some points, it almost felt like something from the movies or something where, we're just like, we were like being trained in boxing. We're living together and we all had a common goal. And so it was exciting because I not only got to enjoy the things that I was learning, but I also got to hear and enjoy about all the other things that how it was benefiting all the other guys that were living there.
Yeah, that's key, right? Because all of you were going through different times in your lives, and that support network was really huge, right? Because that was a peer group that you can each support each other for whatever each person was struggling with.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, of course, it doesn't have to be someone really, really close to you to help you with support. If you're looking for support, you can get it from people that are just there for you in any sense. But when it came down to doing the boxing and that, and you had these people that were there supporting you that you kind of like trained with and you lived with and you ate with and everything, made a big difference.
Yeah, and I think that was a big part for yourself in terms of kind of getting a sense of who you are as a person and where you wanted to kind of guide your life. And from the boxing, then you're able to get back into a routine of working out with weights. I know that, again, you just sort of jumped at it, and that became a daily routine. And I remember you always telling me that you don't go into something halfway. It's all the way. And for your weightlifting, that was how you tackled it.
Yeah, I think. Well, I guess for me, it's just for me, but some people, I guess, can assert themselves into situations certain ways. But I think that has to do with standards. I think a lot, because for me, my standard was always that if there was something that I was putting myself into, that it had to be all the way and not halfway, because it's just like that brings uncertainty into what it is that you're doing. And like to be uncertain about what it is that you're doing, it's easier for you to make excuses and to not do the things that you want to do in those situations. So for me, what worked the best was like, I just have to just put myself either all the way in or just don't do it at all.
And that's something you certainly did, all the way in. And I know it was part of not just the working out, but it was the nutrition aspect of it as well. So your, dietary needs. And again, you just benefited from all of that.
Yeah, and I think it was great because Panam Place, they had a lot of good connections. They also obviously put their own money into the food situation for the guys, but they also had a lot of connections they got donations and stuff for food. And so it was pretty amazing. And they had like a pretty awesome kitchen there. And you couldn't always just go in there and just cook whenever you wanted. Obviously, they have their there are times and stuff when you can and can't do that. But when you were allowed to go in there and cook, you could cook whatever you wanted. To have all that stuff at your disposal was crazy, because you could, the stuff I seen guys making there was crazy. You know what I mean? Like their guys became like, that was one of the things that they taught you there too, was like that you had to start learning how to cook for yourself, cook on your own. Like obviously they did have guys that they would designate to cook the suppers every day. But you didn't have to just eat that. If you didn't want to eat that, you could make your own. And then so that's what it helps me with, was learning how to start to cook things on my own. And them having all that food there to use was awesome.
Yeah, certainly it is. And I think that, nutrition is a big part of it. Being healthy is a big part of it. Learning independence, because that's really a skill that's being taught there. And I know in terms of the support group that they offered was pretty encompassing in terms of whatever any of you guys needed at the time. They were very responsive to it. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that was really important about that place is the fact that the staff was one of the, they're pretty much what made it. Obviously, a lot of the things that they offered were great, but the staff kind of just like went above and beyond all the time for the guys that were there. They weren't even staff after a certain point. Pretty much, they came almost like family, because they were there. You see them all the time. You talk with them on personal levels and start to develop relationships with them. So yeah, it made things pretty awesome, especially considering when you have some of the trainers in the boxing were working there on shifts too. So you'd have the guys that were training you working there also, so you'd be talking to them on a personal level outside of training. Because when you're kind of like, when you're in training, it's a little bit different. You don't really like socialize in a sense, because that's how I was. I just obviously put yourself all the way in and just concentrate on what it is that you're doing at that point in time. And so to combine all aspects of getting to know somebody aside from being trained, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, fantastic environment. I know there's so many success stories that have come out of Panam Place. For Winnipeg, it's been an amazing opportunity. Certainly one that you capitalized on, that has put you where you are today. So certainly a lot of appreciation for that. And you've really been able to kind of couple that with, as you mentioned before, spiritual side of it all too. And with your belief in God and your prayers, I think that's become a big part of your day as well.
Yeah, I think that piece for me has been the biggest piece of everything. I think up until an early age is when I started to kind of have a little bit more understanding of faith. But I think when I was younger, I wasn't really so sure completely about it. And so, I guess that's probably maybe how a lot of people are when they start getting older and that, and they start to understand or learn about faith and about God and about religion, is that I wasn't really so sure about it in the beginning. And I kind of think maybe I was more of like a follower, especially when I started to get involved with doing time in jail. I started to, because that's honestly how I was when I was younger. I was really just a follower. You know what I mean? I didn't have an identity. I didn't really know who I was. And so it's easy for people who are like that to just kind of just latch on to whoever's around you, and especially when they're older people and they're teaching you in whatever it is. It's easy for people to kind of just latch on to that kind of thing. And so for me, that's the way I was, I think, when I was younger, is that I really I listened to whoever was talking to me in a respectful way or whatever. And I kind of just was trying to find my identity through whatever it is that was going on. But now that I'm older and more mature, I realize that for myself, faith has been the biggest thing for me, because what has happened with me is that there's been so many series of events that I've specifically prayed for and like wanted so badly, and they've happened for me. And so that's where my faith the strength in my faith has come from is the fact that, before when I was younger, I wasn't really so sure if I was to pray for something, I was just saying it. But now when I pray for something and God knows, and whoever it is whatever it is that your religion is, they know your sincerity, you know what I mean? Whether you're being real or they know who you are. You can't lie. And so that's, I think, where my faith comes from, is the fact that there's been so many chains of events or series of events that I prayed for specifically that actually have happened. And it just seems very too coincidental for me. But in effect, it really just strengthened my faith.
I remember often we would have our conversations and you would mention that. And it's very powerful because that belief is there. And when you see change happen, that's a driver for change for yourself and internally. And I saw how you just embraced faith and it's become a daily part of your life and who you are as a person.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with, again, finding who you are. Because one of the things that's helped me the most in anything that I do is realizing that you have to be yourself. Pretty much you just have to be yourself. And the more that you realize that, the easier it is for you to be a better person. Because ultimately we all go through life wearing masks, and we're all just we all care about what everybody else thinks. And the more that you don't care about what other people think, the easier it is for you to be yourself. And once you start to actually let go of all the ego and the pride and all that kind of stuff, it's so much easier to become who you truly are. And it just makes it easier for you to appreciate everything about life.
And like you say, it's about defining who you are. And that search could take a long time. It could take decades. But you always told me, when you find it, and it's there, and you know who it is and who you are and who you want to be.
Yeah, I think like we talked about before, now I said that God gives you the same situations over and over again until you figure out how to actually go about dealing with it properly. So yeah, I think that's what keeps people stuck in the process of whatever it is that they're struggling with. They can obviously just keep being faced with these same things over and over again, and they stay stuck where they're at, and until they face it and they realize what it is that's going on, then that's what's going to happen.
A big part too, you've also embraced motivational speakers and finding people that offer inspiration to you, and I think that's been a big part too along your journey, is embracing that and finding those that have a message that resonate with yourself. That's become a big part of your daily life, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. And I think that's one of the things too, is that, when you're embracing being yourself, and that it's a lot easier, I've found, for me to speak specifically about and that's where I usually, when I makes it easier for me to speak about things, is I just speak from my experiences. And that's a good part, because a lot of people are trying to talk to somebody and tell them what they want to hear. And that part there is attached to people wearing a mask, because they want to tell people what they want to hear. But the truth of the matter is, that's not the way that it's got to go. You can give them advice, of course, but giving someone advice always and telling them what they want to hear is not going to be the best way to do it. Because the way that I've seen it is, the truth hurts a lot of the time when you're talking to people, and a lot of people, they don't want to hear the truth. and they can't deal with the truth. And that's why I've found that there's been quite a few people that don't really like me, or they don't get along with me, because I always say the things that need to be said. And it obviously wasn't easy for me to do that in the beginning, because I ultimately wanted to tell people what they wanted to hear too, and I wanted to be liked. But the more and more you do anything, the easier it gets. And so, yeah, I think just being yourself makes it easier for you to speak about things, because you're not worried about, whether you're saying the right thing or not. It'll come from the heart.
Yeah, and that's so important. And I know your messaging to whoever you speak to, or the messages that you leave around town or on social media, is always just to give people that sense of hope, that sense of be who you are as a person, because that sort of sincerity and honesty and openness, that resonates with people. Yeah,
it's almost like a lot of people say, oh, I can give good advice, but I don't take my own advice. And in my opinion, in that situation, is the truth of the matter is that when you're giving people advice, you're giving it to yourself. You know what I mean? And so that's basically how I kind of look at it, is that anything I say is basically what I'm basically talking to myself when I'm saying it, even to say it to somebody else, basically talking to myself. I find it funny how people always say that they can give out good advice, but they won't take their own. They won't take good advice themselves. But I think it's just kind of like when you give people advice, it's almost like you're talking to yourself, right?
Yeah, that's really true. And for yourself, for the listeners out there who's listening, looking for that sort of direction, or others that have people that loved ones that they're trying to help, where can people start? Where should they start? Where can they grab onto just to get that beginning to look for themselves and develop that sort of hope and self-care grounding?
It is a long process, but ultimately from what I've seen is that we all go through life having traumas that we've been through. And so I think that these traumas, they keep us attached to that life of not being authentic, and because they distract us from our true selves. And it's like walking through life, and as we're walking, we're picking up all this baggage, and as we keep walking, we keep picking up more and more, whether it be traumas or whether it be stuff that your parents taught you or society has taught you. All this stuff that we pick up along the way is all stuff that we just get distracted by, and we ultimately are losing ourselves along the way, a little piece of ourselves along the way with, society, our parents, our traumas, our school, everything. And so, yeah, I just think that we need to face those things that are making us that makes it so hard, easy for us to be hard on ourselves. Right? Because a lot of the times when people have bad things that have happened to them, they blame themselves, even though it's not even their fault. Like say sexual abuse or whatever. A lot of the times the people, they think it's their fault that it happened to them, when this has nothing to do with you. It's not your fault. And so yeah, then that starts that tape, that internal tape in your head, where you start to talk to yourself and say negative things to yourself over and over and over again for years. And then that basically, that dictates who you define yourself as. And for me, once I changed that tape, but ultimately I had to start with dealing with the trauma. So I could understand that all the things that happened to me and that I've done are not because I'm a bad person. It's just because of the things that have happened to me, and made it easier for me to make excuses to do the things that I was doing. So once I started to face those traumas and deal with them and realize that, it was just a person that was hurt, that was allowing myself to make those bad decisions. That was, I think, one of the good steps, the first steps to dealing with that.
So the healing process certainly starts with accepting the trauma that's happened and then starting to move forward with it by healing and addressing it, and not burying it, because the longer we bury it, that trauma doesn't go away. And as you say, to reset that tape, that's the starting point.
Yeah, for sure, because we all do it. Literally, we all do it. We all have that internal tape that we live by, that we allow ourselves to define who we are, and ultimately, we're all good people. And like I said, that's what happens. We're good people, but then along the way, we pick up all this stuff, all these distractions to make us think that, to make us believe that we're somebody or something else.
That's very true. I certainly appreciate the candidness today, Vincent. Before we wrap up, what would your kind of words of advice for anyone listening today to kind of start that process?
I think for me, one of the most important pieces for me was learning what to do to change that internal tape. And for me, I've been very successful in doing that by being very consistent in positive self-talk and positive affirmations. And that's exactly where the passion came from making the stickers that I make, that I put up around the city with the affirmations on them. That's exactly where the passion comes from for that, because of the fact that I personally know how much it works. Just a few words, you know what I mean? You say to yourself over and over again in the day, I say to myself, I am positive, I am patient, I am confident. And so through the success of that for myself, I realized how important a few words can be for somebody in their day. And so I would just give somebody the advice that they would need to put in the hard work that it takes to be very consistent, to say these positive self-talk to yourself every single day. You could even just write it out. Just write out 3 things, or in the areas that you struggle with. Find 3 areas that you struggle with in your life and write 3 affirmations out that will contradict that, and just say it over and over again to yourself every single day, all day. I know it can be very, very hard and very to stick to, but it's well worth it in the end.
Wonderful advice. As always, a pleasure discussing with you these aspects of your life and putting forward to others. I look forward to the continuation of our podcast. And again, on the book, All Eyes on Me, your story of addiction, recovery, and hope. And I think that you are inspiring a lot of hope. And for those listeners that really want to get deep in, the book is available throughout Amazon and online. It's a very compelling, heartfelt story that I think resonates with everyone who's ever read it. And I think that, I commend you again for the bravery that you've come forth to open yourself up the way you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for making it possible, Kevin.
Very welcome. And we'll see you for our next podcast.
Thank you.